What up? I'm Josh Paulson, a pro game programmer, and for some reason my computer decided to make a noise, but beyond that I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my design process and the way that I think about game design. Roll the intro. I said roll the intro. Dagnabbit, why is this not working? I actually have voice to text working, or it should be working, but it's not. Wait, okay, testing 1, 2. Okay, roll the intro. Roll the intro. Roll the intro. Dagnabbit, Oh. Roll the intro. Oh, it's because Dropbox is running and it can't handle both. I need to exit out of Dropbox. Okay. Now it should have enough bandwidth. It was just trying to do too many things. Do you see how all that text just came through? Roll the intro. All right, so I feel so happy about all this voice to text stuff, and then I need to remember to close all of my internet sucking pieces of software. Anyway, let's play some jams. There we go. Got some music going. So, when we look at some of my earliest games, honestly, here's the first thing that I did. I just completely ripped off of other games, shamelessly. I had no shame. So my first game, actually, Mechanical Mazes, I think this was technically my first game. Wild Wars might have been my first one. But in this case, it was pretty straightforward. I made this joke trailer recently, just thinking about what I might have done when I was this age. I think I was 9 years old, 10 years old. And so it's just, you're moving around, you move both pieces. Usually there's just two at once, and you try to get them to touch each other. And so it's a very kind of simple concept, but it worked out pretty well, and it turned out to be kind of fun. Now, why did I decide on this? I don't actually remember. I don't remember what my thought process was here on why this would be fun, or if I even thought it would be fun. I think honestly a lot of my early game dev was just I had fun making games, and I didn't think much about, is this fun to play? I might have gotten some feedback from different people, like my brother and dad and some of my friends who would play, but for the most part I was just sort of in my own world mentally as far as what I was working on. And then I ended up moving to Wild Wars, which might have been before, actually. Yeah, Wild Wars was probably actually done beforehand, but this one was really, I want to say really bad, in that it was pure RNG. So the gameplay, you are, and this was completely ripped off of a Game Maker game that had done very well at the time, and these games were all made in Game Maker. And so you end up having your enemy base, and you move towards your enemy base, and you're shooting. And so this was just completely ripped off of another concept. And it turned out like this game wasn't fun, frankly, because it was pure RNG. Enemies might drop 5 of the most powerful units on you 5 times in a row, and you just lose. And you're just waiting to get money so that you can send a unit and hope that the enemy doesn't rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, it was probably bad. What did I say that triggered that? Anyway.
That's probably bad.
It was rough. It was very rough. So here's the thing, is that from there I ended up continuing on, and you know, most of my games were kind of made in that same fashion. I think it's kind of fascinating, to be honest, looking at when we went to Virus, it sounded like a terrible idea, but it turned out the game was pretty fun, really because I had a few good concepts in there, and I guess my level design was okay, maybe. And so the whole thing here was that you are this little virus, this red guy, and you end up going around and you shoot the enemies. Now, what made this interesting, and I should say, the goal was to press switches. So you're navigating through a top-down level, you have to hit these switches in a specific order, they light up so that you know which one to go to next. And the main thing that made this interesting, honestly, was that with the bullets, or at least the most interesting mechanic to me, you could shoot a specific type of enemy that looks like your character and swap places with them. I want to reuse that in a new game, and I have I've played around with a few different remakes of it a few times, but haven't really pushed that all the way. That's probably going to be my next side project, outside of maybe a game jam or two. So then moving on from there, so again, at this point, I'm sort of just making stuff. I'm not really thinking about what would be fun, and obviously there's prototyping and stuff like that that has to be done. So maybe it was good that I mean, I would think of this seems like a cool idea for a game, but I didn't really ask myself specifically, would this be fun? It was more, this sounds cool, which can get you there. But I also had a few misses, I'd say. I mean, this was a game jam that was atrocious that I did. Made it in an afternoon when I was like 11, I guess. Lord of the Rings Strategy is probably the worst game ever made. I really need to reorder these so you don't get the worst games that I made first. Oh my word. Anyway, from there, you know, I mean, I was making games when I was like 9, 10, 11, 12, and then I ended up going to college for computer animation, and there was a game design course in there, a game development course. It was pretty short, and we were using GameMaker though, and I was very comfortable with that. And I was still making some games, and so here are some of my. This is actually still pre-college, so I jumped ahead a little bit, but here's where I started to, I think, get a bit more thoughtful in my game design. And the first big one, actually, I'm going to have a stop the music, was called the Smile Squad. Now, the Smile Squad, I tried making it a few different times, and I ran into coding issues because I just didn't know how to solve all the different coding problems that I was coming across. But really, it was inspired by Solomon's Key, which is an NES game that I still really can enjoy, and then also a game called Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2 March of the Minis. The basic concept in it, and I decided I always wanted to make cutscenes in my games. Now I'm like, man, make the game more interactive, but back then I was like, oh man, I can make cutscenes in GameMaker, this is great. For some reason the main character is called Ori because it's hero backwards. What a great naming scheme. Anyway, I think I'll save you from this and I'll skip forward. The Smile Squad, they're all smiling. One thing that I really like in this game is that you right click to go back in menus. I've only seen one other game do that, and I think every game should do that. It's so obvious and it's so much nicer for navigation. Anyway, so I'm just gonna head into here. There was a core problem with this whole game, but it was inspired by Solomon's Key. It was inspired by Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, and so I'll just show you how a level works. So you're going through, and I got really far with this game as far as the mechanics and such. One of my friends ended up making the music, so I didn't make the music, but everything else that you see here I made, and the sound effects, which are not very good. What the heck are those birds? What do my friends would comment on, they're like, what's up with those birds? I made the sound myself. Anyway, oh, that's probably way too loud, isn't it? I just realized. Let's turn that down a little bit. So, yeah, this game, it had some cool concepts. Like, I had puzzles throughout it, so actually, like, you cover up the sun, the whole screen darkens, then you release it, and you could get a collectible up here. And so you see the characters running around. I could place a block, character would jump up on the block. If I placed 2 blocks, character would turn around. And so you could make your character navigate the world this way. Now, there are a few things that I feel like don't really work well with this concept. Now, I can block up the exit, which is fine. One of them being that it's slow. The game still feels very slow, and a lot of it is honestly just sitting and watching your character do something. And there are games where that can be enjoyable, but for me that's not so much what I find fun. And I was just thinking about this before recording this, of how would I make this better? And I realized that there's actually a very simple answer, and I'm going to show you a more complex level, which levers and stuff. Oh yeah, I couldn't finish this game because I didn't know how to write a for loop. By the way, that was the programming hurdle that I didn't know how to overcome that kept me from completing this game, even though I did quite a bit. I mean, I could have just made it a smaller game and really, there's so many things that I could have done differently to actually release this thing. But let's go to level 6 here. So you can see now we have 2 characters. Oh, and then we got all these enemies. Oh, and you can die immediately. That's a terrible setup. Really, this is a bad setup because it's instant win unless your character falls here and then you die. That's not good game design. And then you have the enemies. The enemies don't actually hurt you, but you can kill them all and then you get a light gem shard, and that's how you get kind of 100% in the levels. But anyway, one of the big problems is that you're just sitting around waiting in a lot of these cases, and I don't think that that's... Yeah, it probably is bad. I don't know what I keep saying to trigger that. Anyway, the thing is that now looking at it, I'm like, okay, so if the problem is that I'm moving too slow, how do I make myself move fast and give myself more speed, give myself more of a sense of urgency, give myself something to do constantly throughout it, and have the same effect? Because when I look at the blocks, I see that the effect is that we change the way that you move. We change where you're going. We change how you're going. Oh yeah, this is a song that I made and then my brother updated. Anyway, so what I came up with was, hey, what if instead you ended up placing forces that moved you around? So rather than having a block that stops you, because the problem is that the verb becomes stop in a lot of cases, and that's not a fun verb to play with in my mind. The verb of just stop isn't that great. But if it becomes a verb or a feeling of I am moving my character, that becomes more interesting. So I was thinking, okay, so what if you ended up moving around with, you still use the mouse to choose a spot, but then you use WASD to choose a direction of a force. So then you have a block that is a force direction, so it pushes up, character moves up, and then they continue moving forward. If it faces in the opposite direction of the character, then they turn around. So if they're going right and then it's facing the other way, it turns them around. But then also you can have it so that it pushes them and adds extra force in the direction that they're going. So suddenly these blocks can also help you finish levels faster. And so as you are going through the level and you're moving your characters around, suddenly the thought process isn't just, oh hey, I really want to make sure that my character gets to the end of the level, and I'm just going to sit here and wait. Instead, it's like, oh, I can speed this up and get more points. And suddenly, no, that's not bad. Shut up. What am I saying that's triggering that? I'm not sure what I'm triggering. Okay. Anyway, voice to text is great. So, yeah, that's something that I was thinking about. Now I'm not so sure because Nathan Drake keeps chiding me. But anyway, so then another place where I was kind of thinking as far as game design back then, and where I think that I, again, started to think a bit more about it, was in this game called Dot Wars. Dot Wars was probably one of my best games, to be honest. Let me make sure that full screen works here. Can I get out of full screen? Good, good, good. Okay, so Dot Wars was an arcade game that, honestly, this is one of those that I also want to revisit because I feel like I had really good concepts here. I had an options menu, which is great. But, oh, you know, I'm going to have to edit my ini file here. So, info.ini, is this it? Here we go. Last play, level reach. Let's set this to 50. Boom. And I don't know if this will automatically update. Okay, cool. Awesome. I didn't think it would, actually. So there are all these different enemies that you trigger at different levels. So I'm going to start with an early level. I actually got all my friends at college playing this, and we were in class. I think it was lunchtime. I think it was okay, but in the game design class, I got all my college friends playing this game, and people were having fun and competing with each other. I got people playing a bunch of my old Game Maker games. It was great. Anyway, so the idea is that you are flying around and you shoot the enemies, you avoid them. You actually don't have to destroy them all, but you can see that the enemy counter is going down, and so you want to avoid them. Every time that you beat a level, your multiplier goes up, so there's an incentive to stay alive, and you can keep getting more lives. But at this point in the game, not too bad. The controls do feel a little bit hard, so to be honest, the game, you can die a lot, especially if you're just flying around willy-nilly. You can just get absolutely destroyed. But I'm going to go back to the menu, and let me show you what it becomes. So the way that I thought about fun in this game was, how do I create contrast? In the past, it was honestly, how do I add complexity? That was what I usually thought of for fun. But I started to think a little bit more about different possibilities. So we've got these. So let me show you one enemy that's a bit more interesting. So we've got so here, this is pretty basic, but we've got these little tiny enemies now that fly towards you, and they try to blow up and just fly into you and blow up. And one of the things that I learned very early on as far as physics and the way that you can play that in games was this whole concept of acceleration versus turning speed, and using that for high speed chase enemies, which can feel really good. Is that these enemies, they can go way faster than I can, but they cannot turn as quickly as I can. So they end up just falling behind. And that's basically what I do whenever I'm trying to make a chasing enemy where it feels really scary, but you can still handle it fine. Is I usually just be like, okay, they can go super fast, but they cannot turn very fast. And maybe they have to decelerate a bunch in order to turn and chase you. And then we added some different types. I think, do these guys drop bombs, or are these the smoke guys? Okay, yeah, these guys drop bombs. Now I'm going to go back to the menu. We've got, let's see, are these the guys? Oh yeah, okay, so we got these tractor beam enemies, which I think are pretty cool. So they'll fly in, they'll just stop, and then they will try to pull you in with their tractor beams, and so that can really mess up your flight patterns and get you stuck with different enemies. And so I was thinking of a lot more different creative things. We got these guys that attract bullets, they're magnets. We got these guys that just block all the bullets at the front, bulldozers. We got these guys that, these are the ones that I was thinking of. These guys drop smoke, right? No, okay, these guys, okay, these are even worse than the little guys, and they can go really, really fast. But anyway, where is, okay, shurikens, which would actually just fly across the screen at ridiculous speeds, forcing you to keep moving. I believe that I had, oh, is this it? Are these the guys? Yeah, okay, so then we've got these enemies that just cloud the screen, and since it's all white, you don't really know what's going on. And so just having these, I would consider them pretty interesting dynamics. I don't know why I never really finished this game, because honestly it was at a point where I could have just been like there's 50 rounds, okay? This game can be done. But I never counted it as done, so it remains unfinished. Also, let's play some jams. So, play some tunes. Play some jams. What's the command? I forget what the command is. I forgot. Okay, well, let's think back. This will play some music. Let's think back. There we go. So anyway, as I go back through all of these old games, And I consider the different things that I was looking at, the different things that I was trying. I was very much in this kind of headspace of, this is fun to make. This is fun to create. And so therefore, it's good enough. And on the one hand, that's not a great game design mentality, because something can be very fun to make and very not fun to play. I think that's really important to note. Just because it's fun to make doesn't mean it's fun to play. But also, it meant that I made a lot of different things. I tried a lot of different things. I tried some frankly bad ideas because they were fun, and then I found a piece along the way that I still think is really cool. And so back then, that's what it was all about. I wouldn't be surprised if most game developers start there, being like, that sounds like a cool idea, or maybe it's like, I think I need to do something cool. I mean, there's the kind of perhaps stereotype of starting with an MMO as your first game. I started with Game Maker, and I wasn't even thinking of MMOs, so I never fell into that trap, because I just was like, I can make 2D games where a character runs around. I'm excited. Like, I got excited about that, and I still kind of get excited about that, because sometimes, depending on the movement that you're going for, it's a lot harder than it sounds. Anyway, so what about later on in my life? I just talked about my early years, and I really did not think about game design at all in my early years. I was just going for it. Well, at some point I said, let's blow this popsicle stand. Let's blow this popsicle stand. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, let's get a little bit more serious about this. So I ended up doing some different game jams. I started to work with some different people on some different games. And I started to think about, okay, what is one mechanic that we can have in this? And that was really what made me go on with it. What made me stick with it a lot better was, hey, and now we've still got that music playing. Anyway, I was very much in the mindset of, okay, how do we make something fun, fast? And usually that was, let's focus on one mechanic. One thing that I found helpful was looking at one input. 3 Lights I was doing with an artist, and we were just like, what's one input that we can use for a one-day game jam? And we decided on a slider, because we're like, that seems kind of cool. Okay, you move a slider to try to have the right light colors come on to help the plant grow. Viva La Virus was a game jam with Lawrence Tech University. I helped head that up and organize that one-day game jam. High Five, that one was rough to do because we were at a college library and we didn't have Wi-Fi, and we didn't have access to the tools that we wanted, and we finished something. But anyway, all along these, it was a lot more of, okay, well, what would be fun? What would be interesting? And it was a lot more focused on that. Like, what are some interesting mechanics or pieces that we can pull together? And in these cases, it was also collaborative, where I was thinking about it with other people. I was looking at it. Now, when I went to the 3-hour minigame jams, these ones I just worked on by myself. And so then the thought process had to switch again, because now the question was really, okay, so what can I do on my own without it looking atrocious and disgusting and have it be pretty fun? And so this was the first minigame that I made. So I made it in C, compiled to WebAssembly, and webcode. So this is not a great game here, but this was the first kind of go at it. So we got a little guy, can run around, jump, collect little candies. You can see that the fonts are super blurry and all that. It's kind of oof. It's kind of oof to look at, honestly. But it worked, and I ended up building up over time. And one of the things that's great with game jams and with smaller projects is that you kind of build up your engine and such. There was this concept, and I was just really thinking of what are some non-violent things that I can create. I was really focused on creating non-violent little mini games, and so on my stream, this ties back, I swear. There are these little avatars. No, why don't I just go to my website and show you this here? So if we go to joshpaulus.com/minigames, I can actually log in to my Twitch account. And if we end up looking over here now, I'm going to grab Leafburn. It actually uses my little avatar. And so this was all tying back into the stream. So I didn't want me characters to get like squashed or things like that. I was like, I don't really want that. But here I was just looking at, okay, what's something non-violent and kind of fun? So I was like, okay, well, you have a leaf blower, you blow the leaves into here. And so in this case, it was very much thinking of what is something sort of ordinary and normal that would be enjoyable. Now there's downsides with, like, especially when it's a 3-hour game jam, it's like, okay, what can I do that works pretty well? Later I came back and added the sound, but one of the downsides is that there's really no reason not to hold space like the entire time, and so that's kind of a flaw of design here. If I end up going back, I ended up just coming up with some different concepts over time, like, you know, you're sledding down a hill. A lot of these are very classic, like kind of one feature games, and so it was very much, okay, you move from point A to point B, and how do we make it so that technically it could go on forever, but it's just a very simple flow. And so I was just really thinking, what is one fun mechanic? I still kind of like thinking of games in a lot of cases like this, just because if the core isn't fun, then how's the rest of it gonna flow well for you? I like to think about how to make that core concept an interesting one and move from there, because yeah, it's the kind of question of like, is it fun to jump as Mario? If it's not, then is it going to be fun jumping from here to here and here to here and doing everything? If the thing that you're going to be doing the whole time is annoying or just not fun or feels like a blocker, then that doesn't go very well. Maybe I need to work on my speech to text stuff, or maybe that was fine. Dun dun dun. Oh wait, I think that just. Okay, that didn't trigger it. So we have all of these different mini games here. Flask-tastic is probably one of the best ones that I made, where you end up collecting all these different flasks, and then they give you different abilities. So you start seeing different ones show up. Like that one makes me go a little bit faster, and then this one ends up spawning another one. And because there's different speeds, now this was a cool concept, because since you have these different characters and some of the potions make you move at different speeds, then you start to see a difference between them. Because if they didn't have different speeds, then they would just all be moving at the same speed all the time, and it would just be like your character got a little bit bigger. Now there's downsides with this, because for example, really the strat is to just keep jumping back and forth, which is not very fun. But it also feels better than some of the other games that I did, so I'm still happy with it as a concept. And so I guess just moving on from there, maybe this is more of a history walk than a game design discussion, but I guess just looking at the ways that my game design thought process changed over time. It was originally, I'm gonna make what seems fun to make. Then it started to become, okay, what's a concept that seems fun? Now, when it comes to a 3-hour game jam, if you get 3 hours in or 2 hours in and you're like, this isn't fun, you can tweak some numbers, but there's really not a ton that you can do at that point. You're not going to be scrapping it or completely change, like about facing the direction of the game at that point. There are things that you can do, but you're still pretty limited. Most recently, let me make sure that I go into an actual level. Level 1. Most recently, been working, as far as side projects go, obviously we have a work project, Archmage Rises, but as far as side projects, been working on this game, Connect, with level designer and composer. Oh yeah, some of the UI I'm actually going to be working on later today on stream. But this was actually taking that early game, Mechanical Mazes, and let's see, where do we have this page? It was actually taking Mechanical Mazes and trying to make it fun. And actually, a few of my more recent concepts have been, some of my old games had a good idea, and so I almost treat them like a prototype or like an old game jam idea and go, how do I bring the fun that was here actually forward into something way more reasonable, to something way cooler that we can play? And so the concept here, this was actually started as a prototype that I was thinking of pitching to a company, but then I was like, okay, it didn't end up going that way. But the idea is that you get the hearts to connect. So before it was, hey, you have these two machines and you have to move them and then block, like they touch walls and one of them stops, the other one can keep going. It's similar here, except for that it's grid based. And you want them to become adjacent, it's not necessarily touching, but it's adjacent. And then actually you have these hearts that fill each other up. And so then you've got these kind of setups where it's a bit different. And now you've also got arrow hearts. So this one can only fill this one from this side. And so we've got a few different concepts. And the level designers, it was both No Cap Gaming, Arthur Bacon, and then Devon Keys. Both they've done fantastic with the levels. Like it's really cool. I programmed the tools for both of them, and it's really cool creating tools and then seeing what other people do with them. But the concept here was, okay, it was a combination of how do we take this old concept and elevate it, and then how do we create things that create interesting scenarios? How do I just make things that could create interesting scenarios and then give that to people, to other people to make the interesting scenarios with them? And I find that I like that workflow personally. I enjoy that, and I think that it's really rewarding seeing what other people do with what I've made. And obviously they take the credit for what they did, so I'm not taking the credit for their level design, but it's cool being able to empower that level design. That feels great to me. So a lot of it became, for me, what is the story that I'm trying to tell? And is this an interesting story to partake in? And actually, I'm going to be doing a lot of things with the animation such to try to clarify a story out of this. Right now, it's very abstract, and it will stay abstract. But in the past, it was just what would be interesting to make, or maybe what can I make a little bit. What other game was fun? I'm going to rip off of that. I think that's probably really common for people doing early game dev. But now some of it is, what is the story here? So the story here is that you've got all of these hearts, and they connect. There are some that can fill other hearts, but not all the hearts fill each other. And so then when they connect in a certain way, then they all get filled. Some hearts can fill other hearts. Not every heart can fill every heart. So you saw that at the beginning of this level, we've got the red heart by a blue heart. It can't fill it up. But the blue heart can fill up the blue heart. Not everyone can fill up everyone else. And then you have to move them around, and sometimes it even kind of blocks up somebody. That's just kind of how it can go. And so some people might look at this and be like, okay, well, is that there are always wrong ways to take metaphors, or ways to take metaphors that are not positive. But I think that there's some stuff here that I'm really excited about, and also I'm really excited when I add in the animations. I think that it will make a story much clearer out of it. But a lot of it is this an interesting story to partake in? One of my core beliefs about video games, I believe that gameplay is story. Or I shouldn't even just say it. Gameplay is story. I'm going to say my opinion is truth, because I really believe that is true. So what the heck do I mean when I say gameplay is story? What I mean is that a lot of people will look at a video game, and I was doing all those cutscenes in early games. Smile Squad, I was like, cutscenes. Dot Wars also had an opening cutscene. That was so common. Virus Omega had opening cutscene, and like I did that all the time. But then I was looking at a story theory. I started to look at the age of 16, comparing every medium and seeing what the strengths and weaknesses of each of them are. If you're interested, I do have some videos on that, but I think I don't feel like I've ever made one video to rule them all that's really like top tier, high quality explanation. I think I need to do that at some point. But the whole concept is that the non-interactive parts are not the story parts. The whole thing is a story part. So taking this into another kind of medium, I guess you could say, Dungeons and Dragons. So if people are playing D&D together, if they're doing role playing together, they know that they can speak up at any time. If you're not familiar with the kind of setup, so you have somebody who is in charge of the game, and they're the dungeon master, and they're basically, for me, playing with other people, I'm basically doing voice acting for all these characters, and other people are doing voice acting back to me, because we were a bunch of actors, and it was great. I loved that. Anyway, with that, there's no question of when is the story. It's all the time. When you're buying an item at a shop, you can have an interesting interaction. When you're in combat, you can say things. You can have interesting interactions with other characters. It's never off. The story's never turned off. You're never out. You're never in like story mode. Now, some, of course, people playing those games, they could do different things to where it's like, oh, this is a non-interactive section where I just narrate a part of the story or things like that, and that's fine. But I look at it the same way with games, where I don't want to be like, okay, because here's what happens a lot of times in video games. The most important part of the story, we're going to put it behind a cutscene, and you can't change it. We don't want the players to change it because this is so cool and this is so important. No, I want players to screw up my stories. And by screw up, I don't mean that in like an actual bad way, but I want people to be able to do something crazy, amazing that I never thought of. And if that means breaking everything, that's okay. That's the point of the medium. If I'm so concerned about telling a specific story, I shouldn't be making a video game. I should be making a movie or a book or some other non-interactive work. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with those. But I want to use the strengths of the medium. I want to use the strengths of video games. And so for me, my thought process around game design now is I want for players to create great stories. I'm helping them create a great story, but also when it comes to creating a great story, it is not just me as a writer or whatever. It's not just me as a designer making a great story. It is, I am creating an interactive story. That means that the player can change it. And I want them to be able to change it, affect it in important ways. Now, I think that it is worth noting that in this game, and it's very common, there is a correct state. Like, you can't just say, I win the level and continue on to the next one without beating the current one. And by beating, it's you played it, not necessarily exactly as I would have, but you get to the same end state. Most games, that's really how it is that you have A and B, You can get to B any way that you want, but you must get to B. You can run, you can jump, you can run around in circles a bunch, you can use different items, you can use different moves. Usually that's how video games are. So you have point A and point B, and the interactivity is how you get from point A to point B. That's how most video games are. So what I would love to do more long-term, and part of why I'm really excited working on Archmage Rises, is changing things a little bit so that there can still be some of that, but that the idea is that you don't have to pick B. You can pick C or D or E or something completely different and outside of what's outside of the expectations. And rather than having this hand-holding of you have to do A, B, C, D, E, that's part of the reason I love, well, most Metroidvanias. Some of the Metroidvanias anyway, a lot of them can get way more hand-holding. I don't like that, but because you have a freedom of choice. You can choose to go this way, this way, this way. And to me, it feels a lot more like I am taking part in this world rather than I am being taken by the hand in this world. That's not what I'm looking for. And there's nothing wrong with games that... So I do want to say, I'm not saying you're not allowed to have non-interactive segments in your games or keep things behind non-interactive walls. Keeping important things behind non-interactive walls makes sense. I can see why people do it, and there's a place for that. It's that I feel like it is leaned on way too much. I feel like it has become a crutch in video games of, no, it has to happen this way. And people talking about, I like games with stories, and nobody would say, I like D&D with story. It's like, no, D&D is story. It should all be story, and if not, you're doing something wrong, and why don't we take that mindset more with games? So, that's my thought process. I want to create a great story with players. I want them to be a part of something, not apart from something, or constantly pulled out of the experience so that they don't mess it up. And again, I'm fine with stories or media. I'm fine with multimedia. Like, that's how I view most video games today. So they're not video games. They're video games slash movies, video games slash books, video games slash everything but a video game. And that's not bad. I just think that it is leaned on as a crutch. And I think that is damaging to the games industry and to our potential as an industry when we stick to our guns about something like that, rather than pushing forward the medium that we claim to love and hold dear so much. Well, I think that's all I got for you today. Feel free to let me know if you have any thoughts, if you have any strong opinions, like I may. And also, if you're trying to figure out, hey, so you're talking about game design and you're talking about these different things, I'm trying to get into it and I'm trying to figure out how to get started. So there's actually an event that I think could help you out a ton, and it is a game jam going on with an organization that I help out with called Games for Love. Games for Love is really cool because I can find their webpage, but also because basically they give money. They raise funds to help children in hospitals, so that children in hospitals can play video games, so that children in hospitals can have something fun to do, have something to get their mind off of what's going on, or to just relax a little bit. And also, they give a lot of money to help different children with different medical procedures as well. And that flower is very relaxing. That's what I want you to think of when you think of Cause Jam 3 Redemption, which is what Games for Love is doing right now. How long is this video clip going to play? I need to stop it. There we go. I might need to shorten some of that. I'm still working on my tools. Anyway, so it starts in about a week, but I'm going to be coaching different teams. So if you're like, hey, I'd like to work with Josh. I mean, number one, I'm flattered, and number two, like, come on out. Like, come join the Game Jam. We're going to be doing these monthly, so if you're not able to make September's Game Jam, which is starting again within a week, then you could go to a different one. I'm going to include a link for this Game Jam down in the description, but you could get coaching from me. I think I'm also going to be doing a project for the Jam, so maybe we could work together. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing yet, but I would love to see you there. And we're going to be raising money with these games. They're going to be sold as part of bundles to help raise money for kids in hospitals, and every bundle sold can go to help one child, and I think that's awesome. I'm really excited about the direction that we're going with this. I've been a part of Games for Love for over a year, and great people there, and really cool organization. And yeah, I'd encourage you to come and check it out, and feel free to ping me and let me know if you want more info, or just comment down below if you're like, yeah, I'm joining, and head over to the link in the description, and I'd look forward to seeing you there. For now, have a great rest of your week, and take care. Or rest of your week. It's Saturday. What am I saying? Well, I don't know when you're watching this. Have a great rest of your week.